Good morning, children. Welcome to this English class. Let us see a poem today. The name of the poem is A Photograph, written by Shirley Tolson. This poem describes how deeply the poet feels the loss of her mother. Her mother has now been dead for more than 12 years. The poet recalls how her mother used to look at a photograph and remember her own childhood. When that photograph was taken, the mother was just a girl of about 12 years old. The photograph shows the mother with two of her girl cousins on a sea beach. All the three girls were smiling at the uncle who was taking their photograph. The mother would show this photograph to the poet and talk of those happy days. She would laugh while talking of that sea holiday. But the great change had come in the mother by that time. She was now a middle-aged woman and had the poet a daughter. All her former liveliness was gone. Recalling her mother, the poet says, the sea holiday was her past mine in her laughter. The poet intensely feels the loss of her mother. She remembers how the mother used to talk to her and laugh. But now the laughter is a thing of past. The mother has been dead for about 12 years. The poet feels very sad and lonely. She says now that she is in a situation where there is nothing to say at all. It is all emptiness for her. It has killed all feelings in her. The silence of her situation has silenced her. It is a death-like silence. To put in a nutshell, Shirley Tolson's photograph is a tribute to her mother. The poem describes three stages in the passage of time. In the first stage, the photograph shows the poet's mother standing at the sea beach enjoying her holiday with her two girl cousins. She was around 12 years old at that time. The second stage takes us 20 or 30 years later. The mother would laugh at the way she and her cousins were dressed. They had dressed up for a beach holiday. On the third stage, the poet remembers the dead mother with a heavy heart. The poet revives a nostalgic feeling in the poet. Going on to the poem now. The cardboard shows me how it was when the two girl cousins went paddling, each one holding one of my mother's hands, and she, the big girl, some 12 years or so. The old photograph, an old photograph of the poet's mother, which was pasted on the cardboard, makes the poet recall the old memories of her mother's childhood. The photograph is a description of her mother's enjoyable moments at a sea beach with her two cousins who were younger to her. They were walking in a shallow water with bare feet near the beach. The mother was standing in the middle and holding the hands of her two cousins who were standing on each side. The poet's mother was 12 years old then. It shows that the photograph was very old, but the poet has kept it very carefully as it reminded her of her sweet memories of her mother's childhood. The photograph also depicts how enjoyable her mother's childhood was. Going on to the second stanza. All three stood still to smile threw their hair at the uncle with the camera, a sweet face, my mother's, that was before I was born, and the sea, which appears to have changed less, washed their terribly transient feet. The photograph shows all the three girls, and the poet's mother and her two cousins stood still and smiled at the camera when their uncle clicked their photograph at the sea beach. As the weather was windy at that time, their hair was flying over their smiling faces. The expression on the face of their poet's mother and her cousins was that of happiness and enjoyment. The mother was looking very pretty at that time, and the photograph was taken a long time ago. Everything has changed since her mother grew up, and now she was dead, and the poet was reviving her memories. The only thing that has remained unchanged is the sea, which was washing the feet of all three girls. The mention of the word transient indicates the ever changing lives of human beings as well as the shortness of their stay on this world in contrast to the eternity of nature. The girl's life changed drastically during this period, but the sea has not changed. The stanza beautifully explains the transient nature of human beings. Going to stanza 3. Some 20-30 years later, she would laugh at the snapshot. See Betty and Dolly, she would say, and look how they dressed us for the beach. The sea holiday was her past, mine in her laughter, both wry with the labored ease of loss. Even 20-30 years later, the mother would look at the photograph and laugh nostalgically, remembering the happy memories of her past. Mother would look at the photograph and comment on the dresses owned by the cousins, Dolly, Betty, and herself. Sea holiday was her mother's pastime, and her mother's laughter had become a thing of the past for the poet, as her mother was now dead. The poet still remembers how her mother would laugh at the photograph, remembering the sea holiday with a fondness as well as a sense of loss because that time would never come back. In the same way, poet feels nostalgic thinking about her mother and her laughter, which has become a thing of her past. The word labored ease are opposite to each other, but describes the same entity, that is loss. Going on to the fourth stanza. Now she has been dead nearly as many years as that girl lived, and of this circumstance there is nothing to say at all. Its silence silences. The poet recalls that it is nearly 12 years since her mother died. The poet is consumed with grief, but is left with no words to express her loss and pain. The poet is totally absorbed in memories of her dead mother. The painful silence of the situation leaves the poet speechless. The poet can feel the grief but is unable to express it through words. The silence caused by death makes the atmosphere gloomy where no one is able to utter words. Let us concentrate on the poetic devices used in the poem. Allusion. An allusion is a reference or an incidental mention of something either directly or by implication. Example of allusion in this poem is cardboard, which was actually refers to the photograph. The next comes the poetic devices alliteration. Alliteration is the repetition of the initial letter, generally a consonant of several words, marking the stressed syllable in a line of a poem. Examples of alliteration in this poem are stood still to smile, terribly transient, its silent silences, etc. You mark these words there. Is sound and stood still to smile. And the next it is it sound terribly transient. And the next it is sound silence silences. Next is a transferred epithet, the next poetic device. A transferred epithet is a description which refers to a character or even event but is used to describe a different situation or character. Transient feet is an example of transferred epithet in the poem. It refers to human feet, but it is used to describe the lack of permanence of human life. The next poetic device is oxymoron. In this literary device, there are two opposite ideas which are joined to create an effect that is called oxymoron. Here it is, labored ease. In this poem, it is an example of oxymoron. Labored means great difficulty and ease means comfortably. Both these words have opposite meanings, but here they are clubbed together. The next is personification, the attribution of a personal nature or human characteristic to something non-human or the representation of an abstract quality in human form. This example is its silent silences. The situation has been given the human quality of silence. Let us see the values highlighted in the poem. A very important part. Life is temporary. The poet talks about the unchanging sea which reflects the eternal state of natural elements and at the same time hints at the transient state of human beings. The poem is a reminder that we all are here for a short time. The next value highlighted is death is reality. Another value highlighted here is that death is an ultimate reality, but it leaves the people speechless and or she tries to bear the pain and loss. The importance of photographs, which is impressed in the poem, the importance of talking and preserving photographs is also highlighted here as it takes us down the memory lane. Taking photographs and preserving it brings us or helps us to reminiscence our old memories. A picture can delight us as well as bring gloom or sadness. Moreover, people might change in course of time, but the memories attached to the photograph are external and will stay long till our lifetime. Let us recapitulate the poem once again. Going back, a photograph written by Shirley Tolson. About the author, Shirley Tolson was born on 20th May 1924 in Henley-on-Thames, England, as the daughter of Douglas Horsfall Dixon and Marjorie Brown. She had a huge passion for writing and was greatly influenced by her father, who was a writer too. She studied BA Literature from Brockenhurst College in London in the year 1953. Shortly, she took writing as a career, but also served as the editor for many magazines in meantime. A short introduction to the poem. A photograph by Shirley Tolson is written by the poem. A photograph is written by Shirley Tolson. In this poem, she recalls her mother and her memories while looking at a childhood photograph when her mother was 12 years old or so. She cannot explain her grief on her mother's loss. Looking into the vocabulary word, paddling, which means walking. Transient, as we told, it is very short term or temporary. Snapshot is a photograph. And the literary devices, as we have already discussed, alliteration, a repetition of a consonant sound at the beginning of two or more consecutive words. The instances of alliteration in the poem are stood still through their my mothers, and it's an epithet, a phrase expressing a quality of a person or something terribly transient, and oxymoron, as we told, a term which contradicts itself, labored ease. Let us look into the poem once again. The cardboard shows me how it was when the two girls went paddling, each one holding one of my mother's hands, and she, the big girl, some 12 years or so, all three stood still to smile through their hair. At the uncle with the camera, a sweet face, my mother, that was before I was born, and the sea, which appears to have changed less, washed their terribly transient feet. Some 20 or 30 years later, she would laugh at the snapshot, see Betty and Dolly. She would say, and look how they dressed us for the beach. The sea holiday was her past, mine is her laughter, both wry with the labored ease of loss. Now she had been dead nearly as many years as that girl lived, and of this circumstance there's nothing to say at all. It's silence, silences. Let us see the gist of the poem. The poet is looking at the photograph. It's a tribute to the poet's mother. She is looking at an old photograph of her mother, which has a frame of cardboard. The picture has three girls, in which the middle one is the oldest and tallest. It is her mother when she was 12 years old or so. Beside her, on both sides, are two cousins, Betty and Dolly, who was holding her hands and are younger than her. They went for paddling on a beach holiday. Their uncle took the photograph then. The poet could not help but notice her mother's sweet face. The sea touched her terribly transient feet, which depicted that she changed over the years and the sea remained the same. After 20-30 years, her mother would laugh at the photograph. She would make the poet look at the photograph and tell her how their parents would dress them for the beach holiday. The beach holiday was her mother's favorite past memories, while her laugh was the poet's favorite memory. Both of them lost something which they cherished a lot and yet cannot live that moment again. Those sweet memories were memories now. Now the poet's mother had been dead for the past 12 years, which is the same number as of her age when the photograph was taken back. She cannot express the grief that she had from her mother's absence. Actually, the poet is looking at the photograph. It is her mother's photograph. She can see how her mother looked when she was a little girl and she was about 12 years old. And shows that she is standing on a beach with her two girl cousins. The girl cousins were younger in age. Each one is holding one of her mother's hands. It must be a windy at that time. That's why their hair was flying on their faces. All the three were smiling through their hair. In the other words, their smiling faces could be seen under their flying hair. They were smiling at the uncle who had a camera and was taking their photograph. Looking at the photograph, the poet says that her mother had a sweet face, but it was of a time before. The three girls were standing in the sea. The sea was washing their feet. The poet says that the sea has changed a little since, but the terrible change had come about whose feet it was washing. After 20 or 30 years, the mother would take out that photograph and look at it. By that time, she had been married and had the poet as a daughter. She would look at the photograph and laugh a little. She would say to the poet, "Look at Dolly and Betty. Look how they had dressed us for the beach." Thus the mother would remember the sea holiday with her fond memories. But now that all was a thing of the past, now it has changed a lot for her, and she had no longer had those sweet joys of her childhood. However, the poet remembers that the little laughter of her mother, and for her, that laughter has become a thing of the past, and now it has changed for her. She can't even see that laughing face of her mother. That is why the poet says, the sea holiday was her past, mine is her laughter. Just as the mother's face had turned wry after she had lost the innocent joys of her childhood, so too the poet's face has turned wry after losing the joys of her mother's company. However, in the course of time, both of them learned to live with their loss. The poet calls this a labored ease of loss. The pain of this loss left a permanent impression on their wry faces. The poet says that her mother has been dead for many years as the girl in that photograph had lived. The poet means to say that her mother has been dead for about 12 years and now she feels herself in such a situation that there is nothing to say about. There is nothing but emptiness. The silence of the situation silences her. In other words, her loss has left her speechless. It has killed all feelings in her. Thank you, children. Just go through this poem once, twice, thrice. Just know all these words and then learn this poem so that it will be easy for you to write the exam. Thank you. Thank you very much. A warm greetings to one and all. Today, we are going to learn a very important advanced writing skill, that is notice. So, you all have learned this notice earlier in your class 10 or 11, whatever it is, but still, notice is very important for you. So, this is an advanced writing skill where you are going to learn the first skill today. What is a notice? A notice is a very short piece of writing which is usually formal in style. It is widely used by individuals and organizations to announce events and celebrations, births and deaths. Example, inaugurations or sales, to issue public instruction, to make appeals and extend invitations. Most notices are meant to be pinned up or pasted in special boards meant for the purpose. Some notices, example, notices from government departments also appear in newspapers. A notice is a very short piece of writing, as I told you, which is written very formal in style. It is widely used by individuals and organizations to announce events and celebrations, births and deaths, occasions, inaugurations or sales, to issue public instructions, to make appeals and to extend invitations. Most notices are meant to be pinned up or pasted on special boards meant for the purpose. Some notices, example, notice from the government departments, also appear in newspaper. And how to write an effective notice. An effective notice will usually include the following. What is it? Name of the organization or institution or office should be there. And very important thing is the word notice. This is very important. The word notice should be written there. And the third point is date of issuing the notice should be there. And the next is a suitable description, caption or heading should be given. Then only we will be able to find out what is this notice about. And next, purpose of which it has been written. Example, if it is a meeting or an appeal or what we are going to tell the people about. What is this about? What is this notice about? And the next is details of schedule. Details of schedule is the date, when is the program or meeting conducted, time, venue, program, duration, etc. in case the notice is about an event. And signature, name and designation of the person in issuing the notice. And the next is style and tone of the language, which should be formal, semi-formal or informal. The next is how to write a notice. List the value points to be included. First, list out all the points what you are going to include in a notice. Then always prepare a rough draft so that you will be able to leave some points, or you may able to delete some words, all those things, because your notice should not exceed 50 words. And check for grammar and style of the language, because if you write notice wrongly with the grammatical errors, you will not be awarded marks. So ensure the word limit to be observed. 50 words is the word limit for you. Next, revisit it again. What you have written, again revisit it. Prepare the final draft, and then prepare a final draft so that you can put it in the notice board and draw the box and write the question number. So box is very important. A notice is always put inside a box. So important points to remember when you write a notice can use capital letters for details such as names of organizations, captions, and important detail within the message itself. The date of the notice can be placed on the top right or left. Mostly it should be in the left corner, bottom right or left corner. Always follow the style your teacher or examination required. Here the date of the notice should be put in the left side corner, and the entire content of the notice is placed in a box. This is very important. Always your notice should be in a box. The individual responsible for issuing the notice indicates a name below the signature in parenthesis, followed by his or her designation. Occasionally, grammatically incomplete sentences may be used as long as their meaning is clear. The meaning should be very clear. In that case, you can use this idea of grammatically incomplete sentences. Abbreviations and symbols can also be used wherever required. Next, usually present tense and future time reference predominates over the tenses. And this is a layout of a notice, children. Look to it very carefully. You are going to write, as I told you, OMR sheet is going to be given for you for term 1. So for everything, let it be a reading comprehension, let it be a advanced writing skill, let it be question answers, or let it be whatever it is, you are going to answer with options. So each and every minute detail is very important, where you are going to look into the things so that you will be able to answer. And the first box at the top is name of the organization, institution or the office issuing the notice, which should be in capital letters. And the second is the word notice should be written, that is mandatory, it should be written in capitals. And next is the date. As I told you, left hand side corner, you should write the date. And the next box contains heading or the subject. What is this event or this thing about? And the next big box contains the space is given for you to write the content of the notice. And at last, it is the signature and name in block letters and designation and the person issuing the notice. And the whole thing should put inside a box. Can you see a whole box is given? So at last, the notice should be put inside the box, completing all the details what all have been given over here. This is a sample notice for you. As a president of literary club of your school, draft a notice for the school notice board inviting students of class 8 to 12 for a literary quiz to be held in your school itself. Invent other necessary details. See at the top, St. Anne's School, Ludhiana, and the date is given 8th July 2013. Now it can be 2021. And the notice, it is given at the top, literature quiz. This is about, what is this program about? The literary circle of the school is organizing a literature quiz for the students of class 8 to 12 on 30th July at 10 a.m. in the school auditorium. Interested students should register their names with Mrs. Anju Mohini, activity in charge, latest by 22nd July, Sandhya Garg, and the name of the in charge is given, President Literary Club. This is a layout of a notice. Look into this very carefully so you will be able to answer your questions given. Let us see a small recap about notice. How to write a notice. A notice is a very short piece of writing which is usually formal in style. It is widely used by individuals and organizations to announce events and celebrations, births and deaths, occasions like inaugurations or sales, births and deaths, occasions like inaugurations or sales, to issue public instructions, to make appeals and to extend invitations. Most notices are meant to be pinned up or pasted in special boards meant for the purpose. There must be one or more such notice boards in your school too. Notices usually from government departments also appear in newspaper. Writing an effective notice is an art which you can master with practice. Your notice should give complete information and must be written in a clear and lucid style and easy to understand language. And how to write an effective notice. An effective notice will usually include the following things: name of the organization, institution or office issuing it, date of issuing the notice as I told you earlier, the word notice, a suitable description, eye-catching caption or heading indicating the purpose of which it has been written, calling a meeting, drawing attention, making an appeal or informing general public, all those things will include. Details of schedule, date, time, venue, program, duration, etc. should be given in case the notice is about an event. And the signature, name and designation of the person issuing the notice should be written at last. Always prepare a rough draft first, revise it, check grammar and style of the language, ensure that word limit has been observed and all the value points have been included. If it is a meeting, what all the needed things should be there in a notice? Date should be there, time should be there, venue should be there, agenda, purpose should be there, who is to be attained, specific instructions, contact persons, an address, and issuing authority. All these things should be noted when you call people for a meeting in a notice. And if it is of events, name should be there, objective of the event, date, time and duration, place and venue, essential qualification, contact address, specific instruction, issuing authority should be there. And if it is lost and found, article, lost and found, date, time, place, venue, brief description, it can be in color, size, content, material, whom to contact, when and where to contact. All the, if it is lost thing, what is the article lost, where it is, all those things. When is the date, time, where you lost it, what is the article, how it will be, if it is a briefcase or if it is a bag, if it is a file, whatever it is. If it is found also, you have to look into it, all the minute details, and tell them where you found the thing, where it was, on which date, which time, which place, and how was it, and what are the things inside. Even if it is a wallet, how is it, what is kept inside, everything should be given. And to contact, all these things should be given. So concentrate more because you are going to write only in OMR sheet, and so each and every detail is very important, children. Thank you one and all.